welcome back. In this video I'm going to show you what just became my favorite chess game of 2023 and possibly all time. And this game was played on my computer between Stockfish 16 and Koivisto 9.0. It was a 3-minute game with a 2-second increment, and this was part of a computer chess tournament I was running on my computer with the sole purpose of finding crazy games. And this game, when I saw it, it was beyond anything I could have ever expected. Let's see what happened. So the first 7 moves of this game are part of an opening book, chosen somewhat randomly just to get a variety of positions. And after black plays g6, now the computers are on their own. And this is not a particularly good move, but it's still pretty popular in the Masters database apparently. And now Stockfish starts off the game with h4, preparing h5 to open up the position and open up white's rook. Black plays h6, preparing to meet h5 with g5 to lock it up. And white plays a4, so h4 and a4, typical computer moves. Stockfish is playing on both sides of the board and also the center, so white is completely controlling this game right now. Queen b6, castles, and yes, black can take this pawn a bunch of times here, and eventually that will happen, so you'll see what happens after that. Rook e1 developing, black takes and plays bishop b4, pinning, developing and pinning the knight to the rook. White decides to unpin and bring the rook up, possibly over someday. And now finally black takes this free pawn in the center, and after takes, and knight f3, white's pieces are getting untangled. White has still a lot more space and black is getting pushed back. Queen c5, white plays bishop d2, queen a5, rook c1, and finally black plays knight c5. So black's idea here is to just pretty much trade all the pieces, all the possible attackers, and just be up a pawn in an endgame and win the game like that. Okay, so now this is the critical moment, and this is where everything starts to, this whole game just begins right here. If you'd like to pause the video, you can do so now. There will be plenty of moments and opportunities to pause the video and try to find the moves. But this is the first one. What would you do here as white? All right, if you pause the video, the best move and what Stockfish played is bishop takes g6 double exclam. So this starts off the insanity of this game. And also, you'll see a bunch of exclamation points on top of moves, and what that means is that those moves are the only winning moves or drawing moves. They're the only best move. So there's no other move that is just as good as the exclamation point moves. Okay, black takes it, and now once again you have another opportunity to pause the video. What is the best move here? Okay, the one and only winning move here is queen to c2, attacking g6 and threatening to take this bishop and win this knight. So you might ask yourself, what happens? Why not just bishop takes b4 first and then queen c2 forking? Well, the problem here is that black can just play knight to e4. The attack is blocked, you're down a piece, and you'll lose the game. So queen c2 first, and we'll see what happens if knight e4 now, but let's go over rook g8. What happens if rook g8, of course? The other threat was takes, and after all the exchanges, white is in a better position, has a better endgame here, and is actually winning. Okay, so what happens if knight to e4 now? So this is another of the many moments that you can use to pause the video. Okay, the winning move here is rook takes e4. Okay, and after d takes e4, queen takes e4. Now it's actually a fork of the bishop and the pawn, so black plays bishop takes d2, and after queen takes g6, if the king moves here, there will be forks on this rook. So we'll say king f8, and after queen f6, attacking the rook, king g8, white can play rook c4, swinging the rook over, and there's pretty much no way to stop this for black. So sample variation is rook h7, and after bishop g5, knight takes g5, there will be a checkmate soon. Okay, there's another option black could do. Black could also take this bishop right now, and this is another opportunity to pause the video. What is the pretty much one and only winning move? Okay, the winning move here is this crazy rook to c4, exclamation points, going straight from the attack of the pawn on this side to the attack of the pawn on this side. And what this threatens is actually to take the bishop. And let's see if black takes it. After queen takes g6, we get actually the exact same position as last time, where white will win very soon. Yeah, there is another move, which is this one. It's also slightly better for white, but definitely not as good as rook c4. Okay, so in the game, black played bishop takes d2, not losing its piece back. And here, white played queen takes g6, only move, king d8, and now white has actually two options, but queen f6 is one of them, and after king c7, white takes this bishop. So he could have done this last move too, by the way. There were two options. Okay, and now this rook is hanging, and if you, for example, move it, white will play knight b3, attacking the queen, and this knight over here, and you're going to be in a losing position. Your king is getting attacked. So what black did was he took the knight, because, well, if you take the rook, you lose your own rook. So white took this knight on c5 with check. And of course, if the black king moves away, you win the rook, you're up in exchange, and you're winning. But black has this amazing resource of king to b6, which attacks the rook right back. So if you take this rook, black could take this rook, and that's what happens in the game. And now black's king is out in the open. Black has an extra bishop, but this king is very weak. And now there's another opportunity to pause the video, try to figure out what the best move is here. Only one winning move. Okay, the winning move is queen to d8. The point is to just stop black from escaping back to safety. Okay, now black, Koivisto, plays queen takes b2. And I'm just going to note here, black has also another option of playing queen c1 check, deflecting the king away, and then queen takes b2. And we'll come back to that because there's a lot of differences. But for now, let's go with this variation, and I'll point out the differences pretty soon. Okay, queen c7 check, only move. Now, if black goes this way, there's just queen b6, and you can't defend your queen with the king because this rook is cutting off. Okay, so king d4 is forced. And now it's another tricky position that you can use to stop the video. What is the one and only winning move in this position? Okay, the one move is rook to e1. The only move, preparing to give checks. Black plays king d3, and also when this game was happening live, I was on my couch, by the way, and I just happened to glance over at the board, and this is the position I saw. I saw black had just played king d4 to d3, and I was like, what is going on in this game? I thought black was supposed to be like a 3500 level computer or something like that. Why is the king going up the board? So I came back to see this game, and my mind was blown. Okay, anyway. Now is another chance to pause the video. And this is, by the way, this is probably the craziest move. Try to find this move for white. It's the only winning move. Okay. If you pause the video, Stockfish played in this position rook e3 check, king d4, and this actually just goes right back into the previous position. So he went rook e1 again, king d3, and now white actually has to play the one and only winning move, king f1. King f1. So the problem is the white has just traded / sacrificed all of his pieces, and he has only 2 pieces left. And these are not very, they're good, but they're not quite enough. So you need 1 extra piece. So what the king does is actually defends this square and now threatens rook d1 check. So for example, if let's say black plays a random move, after rook d1 check, king e4, queen h7, king takes e5, queen g7 wins the queen with a nice skewer. And if king f4, there's many ways for white to win, but the best one is rook e1, cutting off the king and threatening queen h6 and queen g5 mate. So for example, queen takes h6, queen g5 checkmate, and there's pretty much no way to stop that. So that's what king f1 does. Okay, black has a couple options here. In the game, black played d4, kind of cutting off this diagonal for the skewer and defending some squares around the king. But I'm going to go over one other variation. A possibility, another move is queen to d2, which has its own crazy variation. And here the only winning move is queen c5, taking away the square and preparing rook e3. And after d4, queen a3 check. If king moves up, you lose the queen. So queen c3. And now queen a2 only move, threatening checkmate here, also stopping the king from escaping. And after queen c2, there's this move queen to a1, only move. Again, queen a3 is also winning, but it just leads right back, so it's just a repetition. So queen a1 is the only true winning move. And what this does is actually connects the queen and the rook. Now black or white is threatening rook to d1 and then to take this pawn. So that's the right triangle, as Naka would say. So queen to a1, and let's just show this variation. If black plays a move like b5, which is one of the options, rook d1 check. And after the sample variation, we have the only move here, queen to d8, going for the f6 square, and after queen f5, queen h8, black will lose the queen with another skewer. This time, instead of this diagonal, it's this diagonal. Okay, and if black tries to avoid that skewer, the queen will come in and preparing rook d4 checkmate. Okay, so black plays queen c3 and then queen b1 check. If king c4, rook c1 wins the queen. So queen c2, and after rook d1 and rook c1, black loses the queen and is losing. So that was one possible variation with queen d2. But black in the game played d4. And before I come back to this, now that you've seen the crazy move king f1, let's go back to the previous possibility that I mentioned, which is queen c1 check. What happens after queen c1 check, forcing the king to h2 and then queen takes b2? Now the difference is that after queen c7, king d4, rook e1, king d3, there's no more king f1. So what's the difference here? The difference here is that white now has the winning move queen to h7, and after king c4, white has the one and only winning move rook c1 check, giving up the rook. And after queen takes c1, there's a skewer and you'll lose the queen. And of course this wouldn't work in the last variation, because after queen c1 the king would be in check, so this queen h7 wouldn't have worked. And I'll go over another crazy variation with queen h7. And by the way, in this position there's also another winning move, which is a5, and it has its own crazy variations, but I'm not going to go over that right now. You can look that up for yourself. Okay, let's see. Yep, that's it with this one. So black takes here, Okay, so now why does and by the way, I want to point out that in this position a5 was winning with when the king was on h2, but it's not winning in this position because of this crazy line with bishop d7, queen d7, and rook f8. And with the king on g1, black will be able to take this with check and win the rook. If the king were on h2, white could play queen takes e6, queen takes f2, and rook g3, and they'll be fine. So that's another difference. Rook e1. Okay, so now if queen h7, this doesn't work because after king c4, there's no more rook c1 check because this would be check. But there's another cool variation with rook b1, and there's a lot of things that white can try, but this is ultimately going to be a draw. But it's still very difficult, so let's look at a sample variation of what could possibly happen. Okay, we get to a critical position where black has to play a5, which is the only drawing move. After a couple more tries, black has to play the only move of queen b4. And after a bunch of circling around and a few more only moves, the game ends in a repetition. And of course, if queen g4, there's I thought there were mates like this. Let me see here. Yeah, queen d3. Yes, I see. Okay, yeah, this is what the computer was saying. So there's a lot of crazy wins. Okay, so this is one possible variation that could have happened. A long series of checks and king hunts and attacks and very precise moves. But yeah, queen h7 ultimately doesn't work. So king f1 is the only move. Black plays d4. And now we get rook d1 check, king e4. All right, I'm going to have to cut in for 1 second here. This position, you should have the opportunity to try to find this move. This is the only winning move for white, and it's absolutely insane. And if you do find this move, please let me know in the comments, because I have no idea if I would ever find this move. So I'm going to give you a couple seconds, just pause the video and try to find it. And now the only winning move is h5. And the point of this move is that this pawn stops the king from going backwards. That's the only point. And now white is threatening queen to c4. So why not queen c4 right now? It's because of the only drawing move, queen to c3. And after rook to e1, king f5, queen e2, black has the only move, king g6, and black's king is running away. So h5 is actually the one and only move. Black plays king c3. Now another option would be, or queen c3. Another option would be a5, but after queen to c4, king takes c5, queen c5 check, and another variation of only moves. White has this only move of queen d8, cutting off the black's king, preparing rook e1, and after bishop d7, and this sample variation, white ends up in an endgame, and he has a winning advantage because of the connected passed pawns. Okay, and there's another option here of queen c3. There's the variation we looked at without the pawn on h5 of rook e1, queen e2, and in this case, black cannot escape and will get hunted down very soon. And after f3, there's no good way to stop queen g4 checkmate. Okay, so black plays queen c3 in the game. Now we have f3 check, king e3, and now the only move, yeah, you don't need to pause. It's just queen h7 going for checkmate, queen c4 check. Now if you go to e1, you get checkmated, so that would be really bad. So king g1's the only move. And now white is again threatening checkmates on e4, so black plays king to e2, attacking the rook. Now another option was d3, but after this variation, black pretty much loses the queen in any case. So king e2, and now again the only move, queen to b1, defending the rook and lining up some checks. Queen c3, defending against any checks. Now another option would have been, actually we have two options here. If bishop d7, this would have been a possible continuation. And with a checkmate. Okay, now another possibility is d3, and the game could have continued like this. They're not the only moves. King f1 wasn't the only move, but it is the best. Okay, and black, black doesn't queen, white stops the pawn. Okay, so in the game, black played queen c3, and now we have rook c1, only move, attacking the queen, queen e3 check. Now white has two possibilities, both are good. And here black decides he has had enough and decides to take that rook that was so menacing. Now if black didn't do that, he could have played king f2, but after rook c2 check, king g3, and queen f1 only move, white is still winning. For example, if king h4, rook e2, queen g5, and a lot of moves win, but one of them is g4. And after queen f4, rook h2 check, we have only one winning move here. It's not too difficult. You can pause the video, try to find it. And the winning move here is queen to f2, threatening checkmate in 1. And after queen takes e5, this is another good moment. This is not a very difficult move to find, but you can try to pause the video and figure out what white can do here. Okay, the move for white here is f4 check, forking the king and the queen, and after takes, queen to h4 is checkmate. Okay, and if black plays something like queen c3 here, we have rook e4 check, king takes h5, and rook g4 sealing the king off, and after queen e3, g3 threatening checkmate, black has to give up the queen again. So in the game, black had enough and decided to sacrifice the queen right now, and after queen takes c1, d3. Once again, this is the final moment I'll ask you in the video. What is the one and only winning move? And even though you've won the queen, this pawn is still very dangerous. So what do you do here? Okay, the winning move, only winning move here is king to g1, bringing the king over to help out defend against this pawn. Okay, now the worst is over, and the game, I'm just going to go more quickly through the game. So the game continued like this. Now we have a fork here of the rook and the pawn. Now white is trying to create a passed pawn and quickly make a queen. Now here black plays rook d7. And at this point, the computers are probably living off the increments. They have about 2 seconds for every move. So after a lot of analysis, the best and cleanest ways to win were to play one of these two moves. Queen takes d7 also works, but this black pawn is also very dangerous, and it's not super clean either. It's not super clean, as you still have to play a lot of accurate moves. But in the game, white chose queen c5, which is still winning. Winning is winning, but it leads to this position, or the end game that you'll see. And here you still have to be careful, because if you play something like f4, you can get in trouble. You're not going to stop this pawn from promoting. So even now, it's not over. And can you imagine if you played this crazy game with a king hunt, and then you lose to some pawn, and you don't win it? That would just be very bad. that would probably make me quit chess. As a joke, of course. Okay, and black also promotes, which is very funny, but white has an extra queen still. And after queen to b5, attacking this pawn, it looks like white will just win very easily. But black has this move rook to b4, defending the rook, and after taking the pawn, he plays king to b3, and now you can't actually save this pawn. So it's not going to be an easy win either way. And after queen b5, king a3, you still cannot save this pawn because you just lose the queen for free. So black ends up taking the pawn, and now we have a queen versus rook endgame. And if you don't know, I've studied this endgame, queen versus rook, for about 30 hours. And I've made a 2-hour YouTube video explaining pretty much how to win. And this endgame, by the way, is the hardest 4-piece checkmate. Hardest four-piece endgame pretty much of all time, and even harder than a lot of other endgames, 5 pieces and above. But it's very, very difficult to win, especially if you don't know. But the computers do know, and this is how the game continued. And here we have the classic line pattern that I mentioned in the video, which leads right to a Philidor. And go to the opposite corner, fork, opposite corner that the rook is in to fork it, and then checkmate. So that's how the game ended. But there is one more instructive moment. It was over here. Black could also actually take this queen. It's not so obvious what happens, but the computers obviously saw this. Also, Stockfish has table base enabled, so they just knew this was winning. But let's go over how. Because after this, black can play this tricky move, king to a1. And now the problem is that if you queen now, this pawn gets to the second rank. And if you know the basic endgames, a rook pawn on the second rank, this is just a draw, because you can't really, the king just gets stalemated. If this king is too far, this king gets stalemated. So what is the winning move here? So there are a couple winning moves. These are the winning moves for whites, but king e5 is obviously fastest. And after a2, you play king d4, and basically now black has to get out of the way of his pawn, and then you can queen with check, and the king is now much closer. And after queen c1, we have a couple of options, but one of them is king d3, stopping the promotion of the pawn because the king is defending this square and allowing for checkmate. So that's one other instructive moment from this game. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this game and this crazy sacrifice that started this entire chain reaction of 17 non-obvious only moves here. Some of them were a little bit obvious, but a lot of them were very, very, very weird. King f1 and so on. It was a large king hunt with a crazy number of variation, crazy number of only moves and precise wins. And of course, h5 as the only winning move is just the cherry on top. And of course, ending in a queen versus rook endgame just for me, because I studied that endgame so much. It was very, very awesome, and now this is my favorite chess game of 2023 and possibly all time. Okay, so now if you'd like to see more of these crazy computer games that I've generated basically on my computer, let me know and I can show more. Obviously they won't be as crazy as this king hunt, but there's still some really crazy moves and attacks and maneuvers, so let me know if you want to see more of those. Okay, thanks for watching and have a great day.